Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a new episode of Eve Echoes. Today we are going to talk about a touchy subject, one that was suggested by our subscriber Nova Nolgard, and he's quite interested, or she is quite interested, to find out what exactly is behind the things called warp core stabilizers and warp disruptors. It's a touchy subject because a lot of people have complained that the current state of the game favors escapism, and we'll talk about this in a moment. Before that, please remember to like and subscribe if you like what you're seeing here and you enjoy the movies on this channel. And you remember, if you want to support me and help me keep this channel alive, there's a YouTube channel membership. You can donate for a monthly subscription of as low as $2, link in the description. So let's get on to our subject for today. Warp core stabilizers versus warp disruptors. Now, why? Again, it's a touchy subject because a lot of people have been complaining about it. There's very few items of warp disruptors. Now, before we talk about what the warp disruptors and warp core stabilizers do, let's talk about the warp core itself. Now, the warp core is probably you've seen Star Trek or Star Wars. I don't think it's in Star Wars, but I definitely think it's in Star Trek. The warp core is basically the core facilitating warp flight. Faster than light, travel between 2 points in the same systems. For travel across systems, we use jump gates, which are similar to teleportation devices. They basically decompose you, throw your massa, and recompose you somewhere else where the jump gate arrives, of course. Now, the important thing about these warp cores is they have a stability level. I'm not sure exactly what that is. It may be 0 or it may be 1. So in regards to that, being able to warp means you actually either 0 or at 1. I don't have the correct numbers on that, but 0 or 1, it's not that really important. What's important is what the warp disruptor does. So let's get over to the items. I'm going to show you guys the information panel for the warp disruptors. We're going into the mid slots. The warp disruptor is an item that sits in the electronic warfare. It's an electronic warfare module that basically disrupts an enemy ship's warp capabilities. So let's take a look at the Mark III, which is the most basic warp disruptor. As you can see, it has activation cost. It's not meaningless, of course. Prolonged activation can lead to capacitor drain, especially in frigates, but it has warp jammer strength. Now, this is the thing that we're interested in. It has activation time 5 seconds, optimal range 21 kilometers. Now, optimal range refers to the actual range within where you actually can have an effect on the enemy ship with this module. So if you're outside of 21 kilometers, activating the warp disruptor will do nothing. Actually, you can't even activate because your target is out of range. It's not like turrets or guns when you can just activate them, but they will fail, or the message will say, yeah, you have missed your target. These will fail to activate. Now, warp jammer strength 1, meaning take the enemy ship's warp core stability, which is either 0 or 1, in which case, if it's 0, once you apply the warp disruptor, it will decrease it by the warp jammer strength number, meaning if it's 0 and you extract 1, you get -1. That means it's under the acceptable level, and the enemy ship cannot warp. He'll get a message that the gravitational field, blah 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 blah, you're unable to warp, and you just sit there. You can run around using impulse engines, the normal engines, but you cannot warp. Now, the same thing applies even if the number, the base number is 1, and we can consider it that the one is warp core stable and you can warp, and somebody applies a warp disruptor, you get to 0. If you get to 0 again, you cannot warp. It's either of one of these, but it's not really that important. The importance is the base number, you can call it X, and if that X is, or B, let's call it B. B is the base number, and B minus 1 will always prevent you from warping. That's very important. Why? Because the problem with escapism and why the game favorite is picking favorites on people being able to escape and survive is because a lot of ships have increased warp core stability. And we get to the module part, the one that a lot of people have been complaining about ruining the game for PvPers. Now, I will go into more details about why is that and why I think some of it has there's a point there and it makes sense, but why some of that complaints may be bogus. So let's get to the low slots. The warp core stabilizer module sits in the thruster upgrades. It's not really a thruster upgrade, but it just, I don't know, got dragged into this bucket. So we've got the warp core stabilizers, and for the Mark 1, the most simplest of them, you get warp jammer strength -1 and warp jammer strength bonus. When activated, you get another -1. Now the numbers, I calculate them differently, but it's the same output. I just add more signs in front of numbers. So as I mentioned, your base is B, the warp disruptor decreases it by 1, and the warp core stabilizers adds a 1 to it. So here it says warp jammer strength, but actually what it does is it adds 1 to your warp core stabilization. If your warp core is, let's see, B, it's either 0 or 1, regardless, you add this number, warp jammer strength, you delete the minus and you add 1 to it. So if your warp core is, let's say 1, okay, this is the base, and you get this baby fitted on your ship and you keep it there, it gives you a default +1 to warp core stability, meaning you have 2. So if someone with a warp disruptor comes and tries to prevent you from warping, it just cuts out this 1 bonus that you have extra, and you are still warp capable, meaning you can just fly out of there. The problem comes with the warp jammer strength. Let's say that is pretty okay because there's 1-to-1, it allows people to escape. And if someone comes like with 2 of these modules, or 2 pirates try to warp disrupt, and then I don't know, a miner, for example, the problem is with the warp jammer strength bonus when activated. It gives an additional point to your ship to make it warp capable, warp stable. Meaning, for example, in case just one guy tries to warp disrupt you, he needs 2 of those, 2 warp disruptors, in order to prevent you from warping, because once it activates the warp disruptor on you, let's say, actually it needs 3. Oh god damn it. Yeah, that's really painful. Okay, so we have the warp core stabilizer. There's an enemy ship that comes and just tries to disrupt you. You can warp away. There's 2 enemy ships, both trying to warp disrupt you. You cannot warp away, but if you activate this, for that duration of 10 seconds, be sure to align to a planet or something, or station, so you can warp instantly. You click on the warp core stabilizers, it gives you an additional warp core strength point, meaning both warp disruptors have been neutralized, you are warp stable, and you can warp the fuck out of there. Again, a 3rd pilot is required to activate the 3rd warp disruptor in order to prevent you from warping, but if you are really intent on surviving, for example, and you really hate being ganked by a lot of people, then you'll probably have multiple of these. Probably your low slots will be filled. So for each warp core stabilizer, you need two warp disruptors to negate the effect. That means for if you have 4 warp core stabilizers, it means 2 times 4, 8 warp disruptors activated just to neutralize all 4 warp core stabilizers, but you will still be able to warp. So this means the total value is, in order to disrupt the ship, is 2 times the amount of warp core stabilizers you have plus 1. Now these are the basic items. Now for the advanced items, let's say, I think the Mark 9 is still, yeah, it's still -1 and -1. There's the faction or the storyline, the special items in the game. And for example, this one right here, it gives you 2 warp jammer strength and 2 warp jammer strength bonus when activated, meaning that's a 4. If you have a full rack of low slots filled with storyline or faction, this is one of the Aura warp core stabilizer, and this is the Natura warp core stabilizer, again with 4. If you have a full rack of low slots filled with these, just imagine the possibility. I mean, it'll take an entire fleet of enemy ships just to try and warp disrupt you in order to prevent you from leaving. On the other hand, there's also the electronic warfare, the warp disruptors versions that also have big bonuses to warp disrupting. So we've got the storyline, which is warp jammer strength 2. Again, one of these is not sufficient to disrupt one of those story with 4 warp core stabilization. It's still 2. Come on. Still 2. Still 2. And still 2. You see the problem? Yep. There's nothing to prevent those 4 warp core stabilizers from dominating escapism. So it's pretty hard to catch somebody. Now, why I think this is and this isn't a problem? Well, this is a problem because these items, the warp jammers, are very rare. In the game, we don't have yet the warp scramblers, which by default in EVE Online, if you've played EVE Online, there's 2 types of warp jammers. There's a warp disruptor with 1 strength, and the warp scrambler, which has 2 warp jamming strength, and it cuts the micro warp drive. So no more micro warp driving, no more 500% speed. It's an excellent item when doing tackling to cut down the enemy engines. The stasis works for afterburners and normal ship velocity, but MVD is really hard to tackle, and the warp scrambler is the item to do it. Now, we don't have warp scramblers inside the game, unfortunately, so everyone must rely on these warp disruptors as the warp jammers, and their stats aren't that good. Now, of course, this is a problem, because let's say someone knows about let's say a corporation wants to pin down another corporation because they have intel they're about to move some stuff, and they actually want to disrupt their operation because they're probably going to move near them and they're trying to, I don't know, wage war. So cutting off supply lines is pretty important. So a fleet of people assembles and tries to get those the other guys that are trying to move in and make a move, I don't know, to obliterate them before they actually succeed. And how do you do that? Well, if everybody fits warp core stabilizers, you won't be able to. It's pretty obvious. Now, on the other hand, PvPers, people who want to PvP, they won't run. People who PvP do it for the sake of PvP. They just want blood splattered everywhere. There's no blood in this game, but they actually want to see ship parts blown up and ship parts everywhere and debris and looting and whatever. So PvP, players who PvP don't actually run away from fights. They actually engage and want to see the outcome because they want to see who was best at it. That's the purpose of PvP, of course. The standard PvP, not the tactical PvP, quote unquote. So people who PvP won't flee fight. Now, I understand why this is a problem in regards to people who like to play pirate. I do like to play pirate, and I'm at a disadvantage because I'm unable to catch anyone. For example, if I want to disrupt, I don't know, a mining operation, I'm just going into low sec, having some fun, and I'm going to try to catch some miners off guard or people who are AFK or whatever, and or just come ninja inside your low sec anomaly, and I'll try to destroy you while you still have aggro from the enemy NPCs and you're trying to tank them, so it's going to be difficult to tank me too, and I'll have the upper hand and I'll probably blow you up. I won't be able to pin you down, so that's fine. I mean, I'm at a disadvantage here because either I'm able to eliminate you before you manage to warp, or I lose my prey. So this is a problem indeed because I'm unable to do my stuff. Piracy is a profession in EVE. It's something that people do for fun. Like roam the seas, the seven seas. Here is roam the low sex and null sex and do whatever you want to do and blow stuff up, either by being solo or with a small gang of merry Jolly Rogers. So it's going to be difficult. The thing that I don't understand is there's a lot of people complaining about this and that are actually preying on petty miners. Like, I understand if I want to be a pirate, I will go and do my thing and no complaints. It's the game, it's whatever. But if you're complaining because you cannot catch a miner, find another way. It's not a reasonable explanation to start rambling around. I'm unable to catch the ventures have default warp strengths and stuff. Yeah, the devs did that for a reason, because people are trying to sustain the economy. If there's no miners, there's no ships, and you can't fly anything, for fuck's sake. So they're trying to facilitate a better life for miners and for industry people. Now, the problem itself relies on, I'd say, personal development and personal experience. Now, if you are unable to catch stuff, right, because people tend to warp out, and the warp core stabilizers help them, the ship bonuses help them run, develop tactics. If you're a pirate, you develop tactics. How to obliterate a venture in one salvo. That's the thing you should be interested about. Find out how to be inconspicuous. How to, I don't know, let's say get in range without raising any suspicion, and then target and open fire with your damage modules activated at the same time for maximum damage output. I've done this a lot. I'm not ashamed of myself. I'm not also proud of myself, but it's fair game. I mean, if you're mining in low sec, you can mine in high sec. There's no problem there. Nobody will try to kill you there. But if you're mining in low sec, you're fair game. And I got quite a bunch of them. Some of them were actually people who are doing multi-boxing on multiple phones, and they were just sitting in belts, 5-6 characters, named almost all the same, and why? Come on, okay. So, I just come in. If you're FK, I'm gonna start shooting anyway. If you're not FK, you'll warp out. If you're FK, you're gonna die. It's that simple. And I don't have warp disrupting capabilities because, one, they're expensive, and I'd rather, against minor ships or whatever ships that I want to catch that are probably gonna be warp core stabilized, it's pretty dumb to have a warp disruptor in my slots. I can use that for something else in case, I don't know, a defender shows up, and that's going to be an interesting battle. See, there's always fun for PvPers. You don't have to complain about not being able to pin down something, but it's indeed a problem when you come into PvP tactics, and why warp disruption is actually important. Now, I'm sure this will be solved once the warp bubbles will be introduced, and probably the warp scramblers. Until then, if you want to, I don't know, survive, make sure you fit your warp core stabilizers to get the fuck out. And if you're in my case, warp disruptors are pretty meaningless. If you're in big alliances and big corps and you're trying to sabotage or, I don't know, cripple some enemy shipments or stuff, that's a problem indeed, and that should be addressed. And I think that will be solved with the introduction of warp bubbles. I hope it will. So in nullsec, yeah, it's a problem. One thing that I wanted to touch on regarding the warp core stabilizers, if you really want to do stuff in low sec or null sec, like anomalies or mine, be sure to check out what the warp core stabilizers additional bonuses, or let's say disadvantages, are. If we look at the inertia modifier adjustment, -7, oops, no, this is wrong. Okay, the warp core stabilizers. So alongside the warp jammer strength, the warp core stabilization bonuses that you get to be able to warp out, you still have the scan resolution adjustment, which is a very big disadvantage. -50% in scan resolution. What that means, let's say for example, you can acquire targets in 6 seconds. Let's say if it's a frigate, you're a bigger ship, scan resolution is probably going to be poopy, so it'll take you 6 seconds to target a frigate. Okay, if you have a warp core stabilizer, if you're doing anomalies in low sec, this will cut your actually will increase by half of that amount, meaning, no, actually it will double it. 50% of your, so if you're 100% tells that you're gonna target the enemy frigate in 6 seconds, take 50% out of that, meaning 6 seconds will be doubled to 12 seconds. 12 seconds of targeting time, that's a lot. If you're doing anomalies in null sec or anomalies in low sec, it's going to take a lot for you to target those NPC ships, and because this baby fits on the low slot, you're probably gonna have like a tank slot occupied by this, and you won't have that much tank available, meaning it's going to be hard to start eliminating the incoming DPS in order to survive, because you won't be able to. You won't have targets, and the damage will be incoming, and you'll basically have to warp out, and you'll do this constantly, which is losing time, and time is money. I'd recommend, I'm not trying, okay, you can say I'm trying to get you, but I'd recommend not using warp core stabilizers if you're planning to do like anomalies that really require you to have a good strong tank, especially if you're doing higher anomalies than what your ship tech level is. So I'd advise for you to be alert. You see something spiking in local, like 5 have just jumped, and they're probably gonna scout all the anomalies, so stay on the safe side. Warp to a station and dock up, or warp to a planet if there's no station. Try to warp between celestials as much as you can, or ask for friendly reinforcement if you're in an alliance. Make sure to stay on comms, that sort of stuff. As for miners, it's the same thing. You have some warp core stabilization for ventures. If enemy ships incoming, just warp the fuck out. Go dock. Don't sit FK. You're probably gonna get blown up, even with your warp core stabilization, because you'll just get an alpha. For example, the Xianyue, the destroyer, the Jianzheng destroyer, one salvo with decent skills, level 4, just the basic skills, level 4, the decomposer and the upgrade for decomposers, level 4, one salvo, just one shot and one venture is goodbye. What are we talking about here? So if you really want to be a pirate, you can do that without the warp disruptors, and if you want to do other stuff, make sure you take into account all the bonuses and not bonuses of anything that you fit on your ship. So that's pretty much it on the warp core stabilizers and warp disruptors. We'll see what the game I don't know how the game evolves in the upcoming months. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of new items will we see, and we'll probably have some videos here with some news alerts as soon as I manage to find something out that I can share with you guys. So thank you guys for watching. A very, very big shout out to my channel supporters. I'll see you guys next time. Cheers.